deliberate around how that facilitation both enabled facilitators to dig in, but also enabled volunteers to reach their maximum potential as leaders of friend banks in the future and relational outreach, but also like really hit crazy voter contact peaks. And so I am going to ask, I think we have everyone on the call right now. I'm going to mute myself so then the waiting room button doesn't keep beeping for everyone. And then we're going to get started. Who is, I am trying to figure out who is the first. Yeah, do you want to project?
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. Welcome.
All right, hello everyone. Can I get thumbs up if you can see my screen? Says Relational Organizing Mini Teach-in. Okay, great. Seeing tons of thumbs up. So hi everyone. For those of you I don't know, my name is Kai. I am a regional relational manager on the team. Pronouns are he, him. Joining you from Philly, and really excited to walk through a little bit about how we would teach our relational strategy. So this module, these slides would be in all of our events, I think, and would either be done by staff or later by volunteers who were taught how to facilitate this. I'm going to show you all how it's done by just facilitating it. So one ask for you before we get into it is just put your imagination hat on and rewind the clock like 2 weeks. So instead of where we are on Saturday the 14th, it's November 1st, and you are attending a relational event. That's important because all our facilitation is really interactive, so I'm going to be asking you to participate on camera and in the chat. Okay, so imagination hats on, you're all volunteers 2 weeks ago, here we go. I want to start off by asking you all a question about where we are in the campaign right now. And that question is, I'm going to ask you to raise your hands on camera if this applies to you. Who here is getting more than 3 texts, emails, or phone calls from a campaign or candidate every day? Just give me, raise your hand if that's true for you. I see Aaron, I see Carolina, I see Trevor. Okay, go ahead and leave your hands up if it's more than 5 every day. This is sometimes where we see who lives in swing states and who doesn't. Great, okay. So there's a ton of voter contact happening right now, and this is great. Campaigns and candidates are spending a ton of time and energy reaching out to voters all across the country, and this is really important. But we are among friends here, we're all on the same team, so it's okay to be really honest. I'm gonna ask you all another question and ask you to reply in the chat. So when you get those texts, those phone calls, those emails from campaigns, from numbers you don't know, maybe it pops up as potential spam on your phone when you get that call, what do you normally do? Go ahead and let me know in the chat what you normally do when you get that cold contact. I see Carolina ignores it, Trevor unsubscribes and ignores, Heba marks as read without reading. Yeah, this is really common. And this is where we are right now in the campaign. And the fact of the matter is, in order for us to win, we need to break through and make sure we're having conversations with all the potential volunteers and voters we can. And we have a really amazing resource for how to break through that noise and actually get through to those people. That resource is our relationships. So I want you to imagine one more thing for me, which is instead of thinking about a time you got a random phone call, a random email from a number you didn't know or from a list, think about the last time that an old friend or a family member you hadn't heard from in a while reached out to you. Let me know in the chat what it felt like when you saw their name on your screen, or you saw the message from that family member or friend who you hadn't heard from in a while pop up. What did that feel like? Let us know in the chat. Aaron says they were intrigued. Yeah, Trevor got some warm and fuzzies. Reagan, who's smiling, felt excited. Yeah, Melissa says it feels good. This is exactly what we're trying to tap into with our relational organizing work. We are reaching out to those people who we know, who we care about, who we have relationships with, to make sure they're getting as involved as they can. A simple way to think about this is it's a lot harder to unsubscribe from your mom than from a list that you're getting emails from. And once you're talking to people who you know, who you care about, and people who know you and care about you, you can have a much higher quality conversation than you ever could with a stranger. Now, right now, you might be thinking, Kai, this is all cool, but everyone I know votes Democratic. I know I live in a really Democratic neighborhood in Philadelphia, so you might think that everyone I know is definitely going to vote Democratic. And I would say two things in response to that. First is, at this stage in the campaign, we really have to check every last assumption that we're making about our people. And it's important that we move everyone from being a supporter to being a supporter with a plan, as you see on this slide here. Or if they're already a supporter with a plan, we get them involved in volunteering or even leading volunteer events like all of you amazing people here are doing. And the reason this is so important is, firstly, this is how we think 2016 looked. Roughly half the people in the country voted for Trump, roughly half voted for Hillary, and then a few people voted third party. But this is what it actually looked like. Over 40% of eligible voters, more than 2 out of every 5 eligible voters, didn't make it to the polls. And this could be for a whole host of reasons. It could be that they had a mail-in ballot that just got lost in the shuffle and got left on their kitchen table and they didn't turn it in. Or maybe they didn't make that plan to have childcare on the day of the election, so they couldn't find time to get away and go to the polls. We want to make sure that no one we know, none of our family, our friends, our old college roommates, fall into that gray slice of the pie. And we want to make sure that every last one of them fall into that blue slice of the pie to support Joe, Kamala, and Democrats down the ballot. The other thing that I would say, if you're thinking that everyone you know is already voting and volunteering, in addition to needing to check our assumptions, is that there's a way for everyone to get one step more involved. So if someone's a supporter, we could get them to be a supporter with a plan. And if someone's a supporter with the plan, they could get involved in volunteering. And we don't know who our people know. So going back to myself as an example, I grew up in California, went to school in New England, very blue areas. But a lot of people don't know that I lived in South Carolina for a year and have a whole network of people I know there who have very different political beliefs than I do. So talking to me enables me to mobilize those people. So for all those people in our life, you don't know if your sister-in-law has a whole bunch of friends from college who live in Arizona, or if the best man in your wedding grew up in Florida and has a whole community he can tap into there. So the takeaway here is that our relationships can help us win, and by reaching out to those people we know and care about, along with direct voter contact, along with that texting, calling, emailing the campaign's doing, we can get to a win on November 3rd. So with that, I will pass it off to one of my teammates. Who am I passing it off to?
Victor.
Victor.
Hi, everybody. For folks who may not know me, my name is Victor, Regional Relational Manager, pronouns are he, him. And then for the next few minutes, I'll really appreciate everybody to just put on your action-taking hats. For that, I want to make sure that you all have either a piece of pen or paper, a sticky note, whatever it is, or if you take notes on your phone, to have that ready. When you have something to take notes on, flash it on the screen. So I want to see folks flashing something in the screen. I see Angela right now. Thank you, Melissa. Wonderful. Thank you, Trevor. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Claire. Carolina, do you have something? Just flash me something in the screen. Wonderful. Awesome, awesome. Thanks, Nate. Thanks, Reagan. So with relational organizing, we are building our own lists. So wherever you have, if it's your paper, if it's your phone, take a moment and write down the names of 3 people who you know you want to make sure that they either have a plan to vote or a plan to volunteer themselves. It doesn't matter what state they live in, doesn't matter where you know them from. They could be friends, family, coworkers, write down the names of just 3 people. When you have 3 people on here, and thank you, Ruhi, for modeling this. When you have 3 people on your list in your phone, put the names of those 3 people into the chat. So I will also model it. So I have my girlfriend, Shannon, my stepdad, Tony, and my cousin's husband, Jose. Now, who do you all have? Thank you, Trevor. You have Allura, Vera, and Michael. I see Aaron, you have Taylor, Pat, and Kate. Nate, you have Christine, Michael, Kate, and Leslie. Overachiever, you have 4. Carolina, you have your Uncle Jamie, your friend Irene, your cousin Nina. I see Reagan, you have some folks. I only see AO, Nate, Scott, Tab. Awesome, awesome. These are a lot of people. Now, if you have your 3 people on your list, what I want you to think about for just a moment is, how do you reach out to the people on your list? For me, if it's my girlfriend Shannon, I'm just going to send her a text message. That's a pretty easy way to get a hold of her. For my cousin's husband, I don't have his phone number, oddly enough, but I am friends with him on Facebook, so I would Facebook message him. For my stepdad, he's really, really bad at texting. I actually have to give him a call. Otherwise, he's going to get back to me like 2 weeks later, and that is way too late. So you have your list of 3 people. Write down how you reach out to those people individually. And then on the chat, just put what methods you will use to reach out to your folks. So for me, it's text, Facebook, and call. Thank you, Carolina. You'll texting Nina and Irene. You'll call your Uncle Jamie. Wonderful, awesome, awesome. Trevor, Facebook Messenger, text, FaceTime. Trevor, I know you have a Nana that you got to call, so I feel that. Angela, you text, you email some people. Wonderful. So you've done this for these 3 people. Take the next 30 seconds to just continue writing people down on your list and how you reach out to them. Take 30 seconds, continue writing on your piece of paper, and then when we come back, you're going to put the names of the additional people that you've thought of beyond those initial 3 people. I see Aaron's hard at work. I see Angela's thinking. Melissa's smiling. I hope you're thinking of some people. Aaron, how's it going? Awesome, awesome. See the thumbs up. I see Malcolm, but I think it's Isabel. It's not Malcolm, it's Isabel. So 30 seconds are up, everybody. On the chat, put the additional number of people that you were able to think of beyond the 3 people that we put in first. Carolina, you thought of 2 other people. Kai, you have 4 people. Wonderful, wonderful. Keep adding your folks on there. We're right now at 6, 9, 21, 25, 30, 35, 39. There are 27 people, and in just a few minutes, we've been able to think of more than, I'm not always great at math, but 45 people. So let's actually put this to practice and get to work. Kai, if you can take us to the next slide, please. At this point, you might be thinking, you have your list of people, you have how you're going to reach out to them. Like, hold up, Victor, what do I even say? How do I have these conversations with my friends and with my family? The first thing to keep in mind is that there is no script. You're talking to your friends, you're talking to your family, interact with them the way that you normally would. For Shannon, I know that her first research paper was finally published in a journal. She's very excited about that. So when I talk to her, the first thing I'm going to ask her is about that and how she feels, what's next, different things like that. And then we're going to get down to business. I'll ask her how she feels about the election. I actually know how she feels about the election. So I know her. I'm going to skip that. I know that she's a Colorado voter, and a Colorado votes by mail. So I'll ask her, what's your plan to vote? Are you sure that you're going to be receiving your ballot in Kansas where you live? Make sure that we're walking her through that. For any specific questions that folks have about voting when you're having conversations with your people, you want to make sure that you're sending them to iwillvote.com. iwillvote.com is the best resource for what voting looks like in every single state. And it'll have a hotline for any other questions that folks need to get answered. When you know, okay, this person has a plan to vote or they've already voted, You want to make sure that you're asking them to volunteer so that they're doing this exact same thing and reaching out to their friends and their family. So just to recap, connect with your people the way that you normally interact with them. Ask them about what their plan is to vote. That is absolutely critical. And if they're all good to go there, when can they join you to volunteer? So we'll take a moment, we'll reach out to all our friends, to all our family. Kai, if you can take us to the next slide. Pretend that we just had an awesome friend bank, reached out to a lot of people. Say Melissa reached out to 12 of her family members. Aaron just crushed it. Kai reached out to people in South Carolina. So we're going to close the loop here. We're going to talk about reporting. On reporting, this is an absolutely critical step here that we need to finish out and do. When we let the team know how our conversations are going, what we're doing is, in the way that we were talking about earlier, that relational and direct voter contact need to work together. When you let the team know, talk to Shannon, she's all good to go. She's voting for Joe. She's voting by mail. She wants to volunteer. What that means is that we're freeing up folks who are calling, folks who are texting, to talk to people that we haven't even had a conversation with. So you are doubling your impact by having conversations with your friends and your family, and then letting us know how they're feeling and how those conversations are going. So to do that, now, everybody take a moment, flash your phone on the screen, get the Vote Joe app ready. It's pretty easy to report on your conversations. And to do that, go ahead, open the app. There's going to be a button on the home page at the top right-hand corner that says Take Action. Go ahead and click on that. If you can go to the next slide, please. When you click on that, you're going to have a couple of options. If you have synced your contacts already, click the option that's at the bottom that says with a friend or contact. When you click on that, you'll actually see your friends and your family. Find the person that you had a conversation with and then click on them. If you can take us to the next slide, please. When you click on them, you'll be able to let us know, who they're supporting. You'll be able to let us know what their voting plan is. Maybe they've already voted. So you can put that in that same voting plan, and you can let us know if they want to volunteer so that we're continuing to follow up and getting them plugged in. When you do that, you'll press send to campaign, and you'll be letting the team know, like, hey, by the way, this person from the voter file is supporting Joe Biden, is going to be voting by mail, and definitely wants to volunteer. This information is the lifeline of the campaign, and it lets us improve every single day and continue to reach out to people who we need to continue to plug in, or people who we need to have even a first touch with. If you can, oh, that's it for me. Thanks, everybody. I will happily pass it over to Aaron.
Awesome. Thanks, Victor. So Kai and Victor just walked us through what a friend bank kind of looked and felt like. One of the key things to keep in mind is that we had over 100 friend banks that were volunteer leader run. And so a lot of our program was focused on making sure that our volunteers and we called them vote team leaders, felt that they had the skills and tools necessary to actually facilitate those friend banks. And so go ahead to the next slide. We wanted to make sure that they had a tool in their tool belt to create this joyful urgency during our 1 hour friend banks. We wanted the friend banks to be interactive and engaging, have momentum, have people kind of wanting more, but there's like a tension and a challenge. And so one of the big unlocks that we had, the secret sauce, if you will, of facilitation was, next slide, this 3-part structure of asking and waiting, engaging, tally, and celebrating. And we know it was secret sauce because during our vote team volunteer celebration earlier this week, this literally was one of the things that our volunteers were taking with them, like to carry into the future to navigate the virtual Zoom room space. And so let's just stay on this slide for a second, Kai, but if I could just see a quick show of hands, who has led a meeting, virtual or otherwise? If you could just stick your hand up, who has led a meeting? Awesome. Go ahead and you can put your hand down and just think for 20 seconds. What are some best practices of meeting facilitation that you've experienced? What are some best practices? Think about that. Go ahead and drop it in the chat. What are some best practices of meeting facilitation? What are things that work really well? Yeah, I see engaging with the chat from Trevor, Reagan. Yeah, finding ways to engage with people. Kai, having a clear agenda. Melissa, engagement seems to be a really common theme. Carolina, interactive. Victor, clear instructions. Aaron, participation and shout outs. Absolutely. People want to be seen. And I think especially in this remote space, Kevin, interaction. And Melissa, yeah, using people's names, leaving questions to the end, sticking to the agenda. Absolutely. These are amazing, amazing tips and best practices. Gosh, I see at least over a dozen. We're nearing over a dozen, 18 so far. Thank you. 18 so far comments. I feel like we could create a little case study or white paper just on what we already know about meeting facilitation. A lot of these intuitive first observations about best practices are exactly right. Now, I have a question about the question I just asked. If you can remember, what was the question that I asked just now that led to the responses that we just had? What was the question that I asked that led to kind of the participation that we just had? Yeah, the best practices. Yeah, effective meeting facilitation. Absolutely. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Kai. And then what did I do after I asked that question? I waited. Let us answer. Yeah, absolutely. Ask for participation. And then go ahead and go to the next. There's like an animation. Yeah, I asked you to tell me on the chat and I waited. Like waiting on a virtual meeting is kind of painful. You're kind of like hoping that people responded, but what we found is people do, people respond. And then absolutely, I see the next step, which was to engage. I read people's answers out. I validated them. That was what, in a meta way, one of the things that I was talking about as well. So I engaged with a couple comments. And then does anyone remember what I did to kind of wrap it up? What was the third thing after I did some engagement? Does anyone remember? Yeah, I tallied, like we literally, and just so that you know, Ruhi was playing what we called our data captain role in the background. She private messaged me the number because I was like, oh gosh, there's a lot of comments, but she gave me the number 18. We had 18 responses in like a minute. So we tally how many facilitation best practices we were able to uncover. And that's our secret sauce. We ask and wait, we engage, and then we tally and celebrate. And we found that if you keep that framework and repeat it, you can help pace out a very successful, in this case, relational voter action friend bank. And with that, I'm gonna pass it off to, I think, Trevor.
Yeah, hey y'all, Trevor, one of the regional relational managers. Just gonna run you through, obviously we did friend banks and those were one of the core pieces of our relational organizing program, but it was significantly more than that. And the way we structured our program is we really kind of went back to what organizing is. It's identifying, recruiting, and developing leadership, building community around that leadership, and then finally building power from the resources of that community. And what we did for that is we used the engine of relational organizing. We had three kind of core events that drove our relational organizing plan. The first was a strategy session where we come together, we'd explain all the different parts of relational organizing, kind of what we're doing right now. And then we'd celebrate our successes that we did as a team, as a relational organizing program. And then we take a little bit of an action, a little bit taster action. This was really a way to draw people in and let them see what relational organizing was all about. And then giving them a little taste of the action before shifting them into the other things that we had available for them. So then we had our relational roundtables. This was more of a leadership route. If someone wanted to step up and take on a leadership role, we'd ask them to type lead in the chat, and then we would follow up with them afterwards. What a relational roundtable was, though, it was a small, intimate gathering where someone invited their friends, their family members, their coworkers into a Zoom room of about 15 to 20 people. They invited 50, and we hoped that 15 to 20 would show up. And we would actually facilitate a conversation around values and around why this election was important to them. And through those conversations, we really kind of built a little team of them and their friends and their family who are interested in getting more involved in taking action together. Because when you see what matters to the people around you, you're significantly more likely to take action and work for something together. Then we had our friend banks and our story banks. We already went over what our friend banks were. What our story banks, though, was a opportunity to learn how to tell a story. Those are usually facilitated by our master storyteller, Kai, who would really walk people through how to tell like moments that revolve around values for the importance of this election, or importance of like how we were doing things and what we wanted to get done. With this kind of circle and the Organizing Your Community engine graphic that we use, we really think of the relational organizing program as it's not just choosing one or two things. These are things that people continue to go to week after week after week. And they are actually opportunities to train and like move up your volunteers into volunteer leadership type roles. If we dig into the next slide, what our relational roundtables and kind of what those looked like. Yeah, Rue has a great point in this slide. So what our leaders did, how we kind of trained them to begin leading their people, is we taught them through what a volunteer leader does. And we laid it out in the, hey, you've already completed all of these things, you volunteered, now you want to take that next step, you want to host a relational roundtable. We start that discussion, we facilitate that discussion. They're involved entirely in the planning out process. So they're in charge of inviting people, they're in charge of choosing a date and a time, they're in charge of like actually making sure that the people come. And then the regional relational manager actually like facilitates the relational roundtable and makes sure that people are involved, people are engaged, and kind of pushes that down the line. What we did, if you want to go to the next slide, Kai, is with this kind of program, with this engine, we hosted 41 relational roundtables, had 151 friend banks, because people were involved in that leadership and involved in those relational roundtables and really kind of leaned into that process. 106 of those friend banks were able to be volunteer run. And that wasn't just like one volunteer. Those were like 3 volunteers usually on each of those friend banks, each doing a specific role to make sure that they were comfortable. Because we as like organizers and facilitators, like we're comfortable leading a room with a large amount of people, but when you put volunteers in that instance, it helps to kind of break it down into manageable chunks so you don't overwhelm the volunteer too early. And through that, we created 9,342 relational organizers, people who completed a volunteer or a relational event. And then finally, through all of those, we had 207,000 reports and conversations filed on the Vojo app, and pushed to over 192,000 users. So we just had a massive impact and massive scale in kind of building out that program. The idea with the engine of relational organizing, how it kind of continues through that process, is it actually like snowballs as you get further on in the campaign, because you have more people joining and kind of growing your program out from there. And I will throw it to Ruhi.
Yeah, so we had like a little bit on pitfalls. Honestly, I just like went into the slide deck and appended it to have it be an appendix. I'm going to stop recording now.